The telegraph in Ilara's pocket was 3 months old, the paper worn soft as fabric. It promised a home, a husband, and a future in the golden hills of Montana. It lied. Standing on the rotting porch of the Thorne homestead, Ilara Vance didn't see a loving husband waiting with open arms. She saw the barrel of a rusted Winchester rifle pointed straight at her chest, held by a boy no older than 14, with eyes as hard as flint. Behind him, 6 other children, ragged, starving, and terrified, peered out from the shadows. The wind howled across the prairie, carrying the scent of incoming rain and old secrets. "Turn around, lady," the boy hissed, his finger trembling on the trigger. "Pa ain't comin' back, and we don't need no new ma." Ilara tightened her grip on her carpetbag. She hadn't traveled 2,000 miles to be scared off by a child. She had come to be a wife, but fate had decided she would have to be a savior first. The train whistle screamed like a dying animal, echoing off the canyon walls of Dust Creek, Montana. It was a sound that signaled finality. For Ilara Vance, it was supposed to be a beginning. She stepped onto the platform, the wooden planks groaning under her boots. The air was thick with the smell of coal smoke and horse manure. She smoothed the front of her grey travelling dress, feeling the grit of the journey embedded in the fabric. She scanned the platform, her heart hammering a nervous rhythm against her ribs. She was looking for a man described only in letters. Caleb Thorne, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the colour of the Montana sky. 5 minutes passed, then 20. The train chugged away, revealing the stark, dusty emptiness of the town. No one was there. Ilara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She approached the station master, a man with skin like tanned leather and a lazy eye that seemed to inspect her ear rather than her face. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm looking for Mr. Caleb Thorne. He was to meet me here." The station master paused, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into a brass spittoon. The sound rang loud in the quiet station. He looked her up and down, a flicker of pity crossing his face. "Thorne?" he grunted. "Ain't seen Caleb in nigh on 3 weeks, Mom. Not since the trouble at the Blackwood saloon." "Trouble?" Ilara asked, stepping closer. "What sort of trouble? I'm to be his wife." The man's eyebrows shot up. "His wife? Well, Lord have mercy. If you're waiting on Caleb, you might be waiting a long time. Best you catch the next train back east, miss. Nothing for a woman alone out here but wind and wolves." "I have a deed," she lied, though she only had a letter. "I need to get to the Thorne ranch. How far is it?" The man sighed, shaking his head. 10 miles north, past the Devil's Cut. Old man McGregor is loading supplies at the general store. He might take you. But I'm telling you, Mom, the Thorne place is cursed." Ilara found McGregor, a mute, hulking Scotsman who smelled of wet dog and whiskey, loading sacks of flour onto a buckboard wagon. For $1, he agreed to take her. The ride was punishing. The landscape was beautiful but violent. Jagged rocks, scrub brush, and a sky so vast it made you feel insignificant. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red, the homestead came into view. It was not the prosperous ranch described in Caleb's letters. The barn roof was sagging, the fences were broken, looking like jagged teeth against the twilight. The main house, a 2-story structure of whitewashed timber, looked grey and peeling. McGregor stopped the wagon at the main gate, refusing to go further. He dumped her trunk in the dirt, tipped his hat, and whipped the horses around as if the devil himself were watching from the windows. Ilara dragged her trunk up the long dirt path. Silence hung heavy over the property. No dog barked. No smoke rose from the chimney. She reached the porch stairs and froze. The front door creaked open. "That's far enough," a voice cracked. A boy stepped out. He was thin, his clothes hanging off his frame like rags on a scarecrow. His face was smeared with dirt, but his eyes were piercing blue. Caleb's eyes, if the letters were true. He held a Winchester rifle, the stock taped together, leveled at her heart. "I'm looking for Caleb Thorne," Elara said, dropping her hands to show she was unarmed. "He ain't here," the boy said. "I'm Elara. Caleb sent for me. We were to be married." A harsh laugh erupted from the shadows behind the boy. A girl, perhaps 16, stepped out. She wore a man's shirt and trousers, her hair a tangled mane of red. She held a pitchfork. "Married," the girl scoffed. "You're too late for that. Pa's gone." "Gone where?" Elara asked. "Just gone," the boy said, his grip on the gun tightening. "Now get. We don't have food for strangers." "I'm not a stranger," Elara said, her voice hardening. She was done being afraid. She picked up her trunk. "And I'm not leaving. I have nowhere else to go." She took a step forward. The boy flinched, his finger jerking. Bang! The shot went wide, kicking up dirt inches from Elara's boot. The sound echoed across the plains, deafening in the stillness. Elara didn't flinch. She stared the boy down. "If you're going to shoot me, aim higher, Liam." She guessed the name from the letters. The boy's eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" "Because your father wrote about you. He said you were the man of the house when he was away. Is this how the man of the house greets a guest?" The boy lowered the gun, shame flushing his cheeks. The girl with the pitchfork spat on the ground, but lowered her weapon. "He ain't the man of anything," she muttered. "He's just a boy. We're all just kids." Slowly, other figures emerged from the house. A pair of twin boys, no older than 8, clinging to each other. A small girl clutching a rag doll with one eye. A toddler, barely walking, wearing nothing but a dirty shirt. And another girl, about 12, with glasses cracked down the middle. 7 of them. Elara looked at the desolate house, the starving children, and the vanishing sun. Caleb Thorne wasn't just missing. He had abandoned an army of children in a war zone. "Where is he?" Elara asked again, softer this time. The teenage girl, whose name Elara recalled was Sarah, stepped forward. Her eyes were old, filled with a cynicism that shouldn't belong to a child. "He went to meet a man about the water rights 3 weeks ago," Sarah said flatly. "His horse came back. He didn't." The inside of the house was worse than the outside. It smelled of stale grease, unwashed bodies, and despair. There was no furniture in the parlor, only a few crates used as chairs. The kitchen was a disaster zone of piled dirty dishes and empty tin cans. Elara didn't take off her coat. She didn't sit down. She simply looked around at the 7 faces, staring back at her in the dim light of a single kerosene lamp. "When was the last time you ate?" she asked. "Yesterday," the smallest boy, Jacob, whispered. Liam caught a rabbit. 1 rabbit, for 7 growing children. Elara opened her trunk. She hadn't packed for a famine, but she had packed for a journey. She pulled out a heavy block of dried cheese, a tin of biscuits, and a bag of apples intended for her train ride. "Put the kettle on," she ordered, pointing at the 12-year-old girl, Mary. "Liam, fetch wood. Sarah, find me a clean knife." "We don't take orders from you," Sarah snapped, crossing her arms. "You're not our mother. You're just some mail-order harlot pa bought with money he didn't have." Elara stopped slicing the cheese. She turned slowly to Sarah. The room went deathly silent. "You can call me what you like," Elara said, her voice low and even. "But if you want your brothers and sisters to eat tonight, you will find me a knife. And then you will set the table." Sarah glared, her jaw working, but the hunger in her eyes won out. She snatched a knife from a drawer and slammed it onto the table. They ate in silence, devouring the food with a ferocity that broke Ilara's heart. She watched them, cataloguing the damage. Liam, 14, was trying to carry the weight of the world. Sarah, 16, was angry at the world. Mary, 12, was the peacemaker. The twins, Seth and Sam, 8, were terrified shadows. Little Rose, 5, and baby Toby, 2, were simply surviving. As the meal ended, a heavy pounding shook the front door. Liam jumped up, grabbing the rifle again. "Don't open it," he hissed. "Why?" Ilara asked. "It's him," Sarah whispered. "Blackwood." Ilara motioned for Liam to lower the gun. "Sit down, all of you." She walked to the door and threw it open. Standing on the porch was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and dressed in silk. He wore a black suit that cost more than the Thorne farm was worth, and a silver-handled cane rested in his gloved hand. Behind him stood 2 deputies, their hands resting casually on their holstered revolvers. "Good evening," the man said, his voice like oil on gravel. He tipped his hat, revealing a shock of silver hair. "I heard the train whistle. I assumed the lady of the house had finally arrived." "Who are you?" Ilara asked, blocking the doorway with her body. "I am Silas Blackwood," he said, smiling without his eyes crinkling. "I own the bank in Dust Creek. I own the general store. And regrettably, it seems I own the debt on this farm." He pulled a folded paper from his breast pocket. "Caleb Thorne borrowed heavily against this land. Mrs. Thorne," Ilara lied smoothly. "We were married by proxy before I left Chicago." Blackwood's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Is that so? Well, Mrs. Thorne, your husband is 3 months behind on payments. The grace period ended yesterday. I've come to collect the keys." "You'll get nothing tonight," Ilara said. "It's pitch black and there are children sleeping." "Children who are now wards of the state, surely," Blackwood said, leaning closer. "Without a father, and with a stepmother of, shall we say, uncertain legality. The orphanage in Helena is the best place for them." From the shadows of the hallway, Liam stepped forward, the rifle barrel poking past Ilara's hip. "Get off our land, Blackwood. Pa said you're a thief." Blackwood chuckled darkly. "Your pa said a lot of things, boy. Most of them lies. He stole from me, you know. That's why he ran." "He didn't run," Sarah shouted from the kitchen. "Didn't he?" Blackwood's eyes bored into Ilara. "A man disappears the day before his loan is due? Leaving a naive woman and 7 brats to clean up his mess? It looks like running to me." He stepped back, signaling his men. "I'll give you 3 days, Mrs. Thorne, to clear the debt or clear out. If you're still here by noon on Friday, the sheriff here will remove you, forcibly." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and if you do happen to find Caleb, tell him I'm looking for the map. He'll know which one." Ilara watched them ride off into the dark. She closed the door and bolted it. When she turned around, 7 pairs of eyes were fixed on her. The fear was gone, replaced by a desperate, silent question. "Are you going to run too?" Ilara looked at the paper Blackwood had left on the porch rail. It wasn't just a foreclosure notice. It was a death warrant for the family. "Go to bed," Ilara said, her voice exhausted. "We don't have beds," Mary said softly. "We sold the mattresses last week for flour." Ilara closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. She thought of the safe, boring life she had left behind as a seamstress in Chicago. She thought of the lonely apartment. Then she looked at Toby, the 2-year-old, asleep on the floor with his thumb in his mouth. "Gather the blankets," Ilara commanded, taking off her coat and rolling up her sleeves. We sleep in the parlor together tonight. Tomorrow, we get to work." "Work on what?" Liam asked, still clutching the rifle. "Tomorrow," Ilara said, her eyes flashing with a dangerous resolve. "We're going to find out what really happened to your father. And then we're going to make Mr. Blackwood regret the day he learned the name Thorne." The first morning light revealed the true extent of the devastation. The farm wasn't just neglected, it had been sabotaged. The water trough was smashed. The fences weren't just fallen, they had been cut. Ilara woke before the children. She found a pump in the yard that still worked, though the water came up brown at first. She scrubbed her face, the cold water stinging her skin awake. She needed leverage. Blackwood wanted the land, which meant the land had value. But looking at the dry, rocky soil, she couldn't see why. Caleb's letters had mentioned cattle, but there were no cows. He had mentioned crops, but the fields were barren. He lied about everything, she whispered to herself. "Not everything," a voice said. Ilara spun around. It was Sarah, holding a bucket. The girl looked less hostile in the daylight, just tired and wary. "He didn't lie about the water," Sarah said. She pointed toward the ridge line, a jagged formation of rocks known as the Devil's Spine. "There's a spring up there, purest water in the county, but Blackwood dammed the creek upstream on his property, cut us off 2 years ago. That's why the crops died." "Is that legal?" Ilara asked. "In Dust Creek, Blackwood is the law," Sarah spat. "Pa tried to fight him in court. Judge Halloway threw the case out. Said Pa didn't have the original deed proving water rights." Ilara's mind raced. "The map," she murmured. "Blackwood asked about a map last night." Sarah's eyes widened. Pa had a map, an old surveyor's map from the Spanish days. He said it proved the stream belonged to us. He hid it. Where? I don't know. He wouldn't tell us. Said it was safer if we didn't know. Ilara looked back at the house. The other children were stirring. She realized then that this wasn't just a foreclosure. It was a siege. Blackwood was starving them out to get that map. "Get your brother," Ilara said. "We're going for a ride." "We don't have horses," Sarah said. "Blackwood took them as collateral last month, all except old Buster, and he's lame." "Then we walk," Ilara said. "I need to see where your father went missing." Leaving Mary in charge of the little ones, Ilara, Sarah, and Liam hiked toward the Devil's Spine. It was a grueling 3-mile trek uphill. Liam carried the rifle, walking 10 paces ahead, scanning the horizon like a soldier in enemy territory. They reached a narrow ravine known as Dead Man's Drop. "This is where we found his horse," Liam said, his voice tight. He pointed to a scuff mark near the edge of the cliff. "Sheriff Miller said Pa probably got drunk and fell over, but Pa didn't drink." Ilara walked to the edge. It was a 100-foot drop into jagged rocks. If Caleb had fallen, there would be no body to recover, just scattered remains. But something caught her eye. Caught in a thorny bush about 10 feet down the cliff face was a piece of fabric. "Hold my legs," Ilara ordered Liam. "What? You're crazy!" the boy protested. "Hold them!" Ilara lay on her stomach, inching over the precipice. The wind whipped her hair into her eyes. She reached down, her fingers straining. She grabbed the fabric and yanked it free, scrambling back up to solid ground. She held it up. It was a torn pocket from a vest. Leather, high quality. "That ain't Pa's," Liam said, inspecting it. "Pa wore canvas and wool. This is fancy leather." Ilara turned the scrap over. Embossed on the inner lining were the initials SB. "Silas Blackwood," Sarah breathed. "He was here." "Or someone wearing his clothes," Ilara said. She shoved the fabric into her pocket. "Your father didn't fall. He was pushed, or there was a struggle." "So he's dead," Liam said, his shoulders slumping. The hope he had been clinging to seemed to evaporate. "Not necessarily," Ilara said, her mind working furiously. "If Blackwood killed him, he would have taken the map. But Blackwood asked me for the map last night, which means Caleb didn't have it on him when whatever happened, happened. And Blackwood still doesn't have it." "So where is it?" Sarah asked. Ilara looked out over the vast, dry valley. Caleb knew Blackwood was coming for him. He hid it somewhere no one would look. Somewhere only a Thorne would go. She looked at the children. "What was the one place your father told you never to go?" Liam and Sarah exchanged a look. "The old silver mine," they said in unison. "Up in the North Ridge. He said it was unstable, full of ghosts." Ilara adjusted her skirt, dusting off the dirt. "Well then, I hope you children aren't afraid of ghosts, because we're going mining." The entrance to the old silver mine gaped like a wound in the side of the North Ridge. The locals called it the Devil's Throat, and standing before it, Ilara could see why. The timbers bracing the opening were rotted black, and a cold, fetid wind exhaled from the darkness, smelling of sulphur and wet earth. "Stay close," Ilara commanded, lighting the kerosene lantern she had brought from the barn. The flames sputtered, casting long, dancing shadows against the rock walls. Liam gripped the Winchester tight, his knuckles white. Sarah followed, clutching a rusted crowbar she had found in the tool shed. "Pa said the deeper you go, the thinner the air gets," Liam whispered, his voice echoing slightly. "Said men start seeing things, hearing their own names." "We aren't going deep," Ilara assured him, though her own heart was beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "We just need to find where your father would have hidden something." They ventured into the gloom. The mine was a labyrinth of twisting tunnels, shored up by beams that groaned under the weight of the mountain. Water dripped from the ceiling, plink, 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 a maddening metronome in the silence. For 20 minutes, they walked. Ilara kept her eyes on the ground, looking for footprints. The floor was thick with dust, undisturbed for years, except for a single set of tracks heading into a side tunnel that had been boarded up. The boards had been pried loose recently. "Look," Ilara said, holding the lantern high. "Someone's been through here." "Pa!" Sarah breathed, hope warring with fear in her voice. They squeezed through the gap in the boards. The tunnel beyond was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people to walk abreast. It led to a small, hollowed-out cavern that had clearly served as a miner's rest station decades ago. There was a crude stone table, a collapsed cot, and a metal box sitting in the corner. Liam rushed forward, but Ilara grabbed his collar, yanking him back. "Wait! It's right there," Liam argued. "Look at the floor," Ilara pointed. Stretched across the dirt in front of the box was a thin, almost invisible tripwire. It was crude, likely made from fishing line, connected to a precarious pile of rocks in the ceiling. "Your father didn't just hide this," Ilara murmured, impressed. "He trapped it." She carefully stepped over the line, motioning for the children to stay back. She knelt before the metal box. It was a lock box, heavy and rusted. There was no key. "Sarah, the crowbar," Ilara said. Sarah handed it over. Ilara jammed the flat edge under the lid and leaned her weight into it. The metal screeched in protest. With a grunt of effort, she popped the latch. The lid flew back. Inside, there was no gold, no money. There was a rolled-up parchment, a small leather-bound journal, and a pristine envelope with Ilara written on it in elegant script. "He knew," Ilara whispered, a chill running down her spine. "He knew I was coming. He knew he might not be there." She picked up the letter first. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. "My dearest Ilara, if you are reading this, I have failed to meet you at the station. For that, I am eternally sorry. I brought you into a storm, not a home. Silas Blackwood doesn't just want the water. He wants what is under it. The map in this box proves two things. First, that the Thorne water rights predate the town of Dust Creek. Second, and more dangerous, is the surveyor's note in the margin. The creek bed sits atop a vein of quartz gold, Ilara, a vein that runs straight under our house. Blackwood found out. He offered to buy me out for pennies. When I refused, the threats started. I'm going to Helena to file the claim directly with the governor. If I don't make it back, the claim is in this box. It needs a signature and a witness to be legal. Protect the children. They are good kids, just scared. Be the mother they need. Caleb. Gold, Liam whispered, peering over her shoulder. We're sitting on a gold mine? That's why he's starving us out, Sarah said, her voice trembling with rage. He wants to steal it all. Ilara unrolled the map. It was old, drawn in ink that had faded to brown, but the boundary lines were clear. And there, in the corner, was the official seal of the Montana Territory. This was the leverage they needed. We have to go, Ilara said, shoving the documents into her bodice. We take this to the sheriff. Once it's filed, Blackwood can't touch us. Click. The sound of a hammer being cocked echoed through the cavern. Ilara froze. Slowly she turned around. Standing at the entrance of the small cavern, blocking their exit, was a man. He was huge, wearing a duster coat covered in trail dust. A scar ran from his ear to his chin, pulling his lip into a permanent sneer. He held a Colt revolver leveled at Ilara's head. It wasn't Blackwood. It was one of the deputies she had seen on the porch, the one with dead eyes. Smart man, Caleb Thorne, the deputy said, his voice a raspy growl. Tricky, but not tricky enough. How long have you been following us? Ilara asked, stepping in front of the children. Since you left the house, Mrs. Thorne. Mr. Blackwood figured you'd lead us to the stash eventually. We tore the house apart looking for it. Figured the girl or the boy knew. Turns out it took a stranger to solve the puzzle. He held out his free hand. Give it here, the map. If I give it to you, you'll kill us, Ilara said, her voice surprisingly steady. I'll kill you anyway, the deputy shrugged. But if you give it to me, I'll make it quick. Refuse, and I start with the boy. He shifted his aim to Liam. Liam raised the Winchester, but his hands were shaking too hard. The deputy laughed. Put it down, boy. That toy ain't gonna save you. Ilara's mind raced. The lantern was in her left hand. The crowbar was on the floor near Sarah. The tripwire was behind her. Okay, Ilara said, feigning defeat. Okay, just let the children go. No deals, the deputy snarled. The map, now. Ilara reached into her dress, as if retrieving the map. Here, take it. She stepped forward, but instead of pulling out the map, she swung the kerosene lantern with all her might. She didn't aim for the deputy. She aimed for the wall directly beside him, the wall supported by the rotting timber. The lantern shattered against the rock. Fire exploded, splashing oil onto the dry timber. Run! Ilara screamed. The deputy fired blindly. Bang! The bullet whizzed past Ilara's ear, striking the rock. The timber, already weakened by age and now engulfed in sudden flame, groaned. Ilara grabbed Liam and Sarah and shoved them toward the back of the cavern, where a narrow ventilation fissure cracked the rock wall. Go! Squeeze through! What about you? Liam yelled, trying to drag her. I'm right behind you, the deputy roared, swatting at the flames on his coat. He stepped forward to shoot again, but his boot caught the tripwire Ilara had stepped over earlier. The pile of rocks in the ceiling, undisturbed for 20 years, gave way. With a thunderous crash, the ceiling of the tunnel entrance collapsed. A massive slab of granite slammed down between Ilara and the deputy. Dust billowed out, choking and thick. She heard the deputy scream, then the muffled sound of coughing from the other side of the rubble. He wasn't dead, but he was blocked. "Ilara!" Sarah screamed from the fissure. Ilara scrambled through the dust, coughing, her eyes stinging. She squeezed her body into the narrow crack in the rock. It was a tight fit, the stone scraping her skin raw, but she pushed through, emerging into the daylight on the far side of the ridge, 50 feet away from the main entrance. They tumbled onto the grass, gasping for air, covered in soot and sweat. Below them, they could see the deputy's horse tied to a scrub brush, and in the distance, dust clouds rising. More riders were coming. "He'll dig himself out," Liam gasped, wiping blood from a scrape on his forehead. "Or he'll signal the others." Ilara checked her dress. The map was still there, crinkling against her skin. "Let him dig," Ilara said, standing up and smoothing her ruined dress. She looked at the terrified children, then down at the homestead in the valley below. "We have the truth now. But the truth is useless if we're dead. We have to get to town." "Town?" Sarah asked, incredulously. "Blackwood owns the town." "He owns the bank," Ilara corrected, her eyes hard. "He owns the debt, but he doesn't own the law. Not all of it. We're going to see Sheriff Miller." "Miller is a drunk," Liam spat. "He's a drunk with a badge," Ilara said, "and right now, he's our only hope." The journey back to the farmhouse was a blur of exhaustion. They retrieved the younger children, packing them into the buckboard wagon. Ilara harnessed old Buster, the lame horse. He wouldn't be able to run, but he could walk them to town. She didn't tell the little ones about the gunfight or the gold. She only told them they were going on a trip. "Are we running away?" Mary asked, clutching the one-eyed rag doll. "No," Ilara said, climbing into the driver's seat. She wore Caleb's old duster coat over her dress to hide the soot. "We're running to the fight." They reached Dust Creek just as the sun was hitting high noon. The town looked sleepy and innocent, belying the rot at its core. Ilara drove the wagon straight to the sheriff's office, a brick building with iron bars on the windows. "Stay in the wagon," Ilara ordered Liam. She handed him the Winchester, hidden under a blanket. "If I'm not out in 10 minutes, you take the wagon and you ride for the mission church in the valley. Don't stop for anything." "I should go with you," Liam argued. "You have to protect your brothers and sisters," Ilara said, cupping his dirty cheek. "That's the job, Liam." She marched into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Miller was slumped at his desk, nursing a cup of coffee that smelled suspiciously of rye whiskey. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "Mrs. Thorne," he grunted, "you look like you've been dragged through hell backwards." "I found it, Sheriff," Ilara said, slamming the map onto his desk. "I found proof." Miller blinked, straightening up. He looked at the map, then at Ilara. "Proof of what?" "Proof that Silas Blackwood murdered my husband, or had him murdered. And proof that he's been illegally blocking our water rights to devalue our land because there is gold under it." Miller's hand shook slightly as he reached for the map. He traced the lines with a callous finger. He read the surveyor's note. His face paled. "Gold," he muttered. "Mother of God." Caleb was sitting on a fortune. "I need you to arrest Blackwood," Ilara said. "I need you to send a telegram to the U.S. Marshal in Helena. I want federal protection for those children." Miller sat back in his chair, rubbing his face. He looked at the map, then at the door, then back at Ilara. For a moment, Ilara saw a flicker of decency in his eyes, a memory of the man he might have been before the whiskey took hold. "You got guts, lady," Miller said softly. "I'll give you that." "Do your job, Sheriff," Elara pleaded. Please. Miller stood up. He walked over to the gun rack, unlocked it, and pulled down a double-barreled shotgun. He broke the breech, checking the shells. You're right, Miller said. It's time this town had a cleaning. Elara let out a breath she felt she had been holding for days. Thank you. Miller turned around, but he didn't head for the door. He pointed the shotgun at Elara. Elara froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. Sheriff! I'm sorry, Mrs. Thorne, Miller said, his voice heavy with resignation, but I owe Blackwood $3,000. He holds the note on my house, too, on my life. The back door of the office opened. Silas Blackwood stepped in. He looked impeccable, his silver hair gleaming, his suit dust-free. He smelled of bay rum and expensive cigars. Well done, Miller, Blackwood purred. He walked over to the desk and picked up the map. He looked at it with the affection a man might show a lover. Finally, the last loose end. He turned to Elara, a pitying smile on his lips. You really are a resourceful woman, Elara. It's a shame. You would have made a formidable ally. You killed him, Elara spat, her hands balling into fists. You killed Caleb. I didn't lay a hand on him, Blackwood said smoothly. Caleb was stubborn. He refused to see reason. My associates merely escorted him to the edge of the canyon to persuade him. He chose to fight. Gravity did the rest. He folded the map and placed it in his breast pocket. Lock her up, Miller. What about the children? Miller asked, keeping the gun trained on Elara. The orphanage is expecting them, Blackwood said, checking his pocket watch. My men are collecting them from the wagon outside as we speak. No! Elara screamed. She lunged at Blackwood. Miller was faster. He swung the stock of the shotgun, catching Elara in the stomach. She doubled over, gasping for air, collapsing to the floor. Don't make me hurt you, ma'am, Miller said, his voice trembling. Just get in the cell. They dragged her into the holding cell at the back of the office. The heavy iron door slammed shut. The key turned with a final, echoing click. Elara scrambled to the barred window, pulling herself up to look out. She saw the street. She saw the buckboard wagon. Blackwood's men, 3 of them, were surrounding it. She saw them pulling the children down. She saw Sarah screaming, kicking at a man's shins. She saw the twins crying, but she didn't see Liam. The driver's seat was empty. The blanket where the Winchester had been hidden was thrown aside. Where is he? Elara whispered, gripping the cold iron bars until her fingers went numb. Blackwood stepped out onto the sidewalk, surveying his prize. He gestured for his men to load the children into a carriage that had just pulled up, a black carriage with barred windows, an asylum wagon. Take them to Helena, Blackwood ordered, his voice drifting up to Elara's window. And make sure the paperwork says, abandoned. Elara sank to the floor of the cell. She had failed. She had walked into the trap, handed over the only leverage they had, and led the wolf right to the lambs. She buried her face in her hands, the image of Caleb's letter burning in her mind. Be the mother they need. I'm sorry, she sobbed into the silence of the jail. I'm so sorry. Psst. The sound was barely audible. Elara lifted her head. It came from the alleyway window, a small, barred opening high on the back wall of the cell, near the ceiling. Psst! Elara! She scrambled up onto the cot, stretching to reach the window. She grasped the bars and pulled herself up. Peering in from the outside, hanging upside down from the roof overhang like a possum, was Liam. His face was streaked with tears, but his eyes were fierce. Liam! She hissed. You have to run. They took the others. I know, Liam whispered. I saw. I hid under the wagon when I saw Miller pull the gun on you. You have to get out of here. Go to the mission, Elara begged. No, the boy said. He pulled something from his belt. It was a ring of keys. Elara's eyes widened. How? "Miller's drunk," Liam whispered. "He left his spare set on the hook by the back door when he went out to help Blackwood load the carriage. I swiped him. Liam, that's dangerous. If they catch you—" "They won't," Liam said. He wasn't a child anymore. The fear was gone, burned away by necessity. "Pa told me to take care of the family. That includes you." He reached through the bars, his hand shaking, trying to fit the key into the lock of the back window. It wouldn't fit. These were door keys, not window keys. "It's not working," he groaned. "Listen to me," Ilara said, her mind racing. She needed a new plan. "Stop trying the window. You can't get me out this way. You have to go." "I ain't leaving you. You aren't leaving me," Ilara said intensely. "You are being my partner. Listen, Blackwood has the map. He's going to the bank to put it in his safe before he sends it to the capital to file the claim in his name. The bank closes in an hour. Tonight, the town celebrates the Founders' Day dance. Everyone will be at the saloon or the square." "So?" "So," Ilara said, a dark, desperate plan forming. "The bank will be empty, and Blackwood will be distracted giving his speech." "You want to rob the bank?" Liam asked, his eyes wide. "No," Ilara said. "I want to steal back what's ours. But first, we need a diversion. A big one." She looked at the boy. "Do you remember where your pa kept the dynamite for stump clearing?" Liam nodded slowly. "Is there any left in the barn?" "A whole crate." Liam grinned, a jagged, dangerous smile that looked just like his father's. "Good," Ilara said. "Get the dynamite, get Buster, and meet me behind the blacksmith shop in 2 hours." "But how are you getting out?" Ilara looked at the cell door, then at the slop bucket in the corner, and then at the heavy iron bed frame. "Sheriff Miller is a drunk," she said coldly, "and drunks make mistakes. I'm going to wait for him to come bring me my last meal, and then I'm going to introduce him to a Chicago lullaby." "What's a Chicago lullaby?" "It involves a metal bar and a lot of regrets," Ilara said. "Now go." Liam dropped from the window and vanished into the shadows. Ilara stepped down from the cot. She walked over to the bed frame and began to work one of the iron legs loose. It was rusted, but loose. She twisted it back and forth, the metal grinding. She had been a seamstress. She had been a widow. She had been a victim. But as the iron leg came free in her hand, heavy and cold, Ilara Vance realized she was something else entirely now. She was a Thorne, and she was going to burn Silas Blackwood's kingdom to the ground. The sun dipped low, casting blood-red shadows across the jail cell floor. Sheriff Miller entered, smelling of rye whiskey, carrying a tin plate of stale bread. "Supper, Mrs. Thorne," he mumbled. "Last meal before the circuit judge rides in tomorrow." Ilara stood up, keeping her right hand hidden in the folds of her skirt, where she gripped the rusted iron leg she had worked loose from the bed frame. "Sheriff," she whispered, feigning a stumble. "I think I'm going to faint." Miller instinctively reached through the bars to steady her. "Whoa there, lady." That was his mistake. As he leaned forward, Ilara swung the iron bar in a vicious arc. It connected with his temple with a sickening thud. The sheriff crumpled to the floor. Ilara wasted no time. She snatched the keys from his belt, unlocked the door, and buckled his heavy gun belt around her waist. She checked the Colt Peacemaker, 6 shots, and fled out the back door into the alley. The town was buzzing with the Founders' Day celebration. Lanterns were lit, and a crowd gathered near the square where Silas Blackwood was preparing to give a speech. Ilara stuck to the shadows, making her way to the blacksmith's shed, where a small voice whispered her name. "Ilara?" Liam stepped out, his face scrubbed clean but his eyes wild. Beside him was the buckboard wagon, with old Buster hitched up. In the back sat a crate of dynamite. I fused 3 sticks, Liam whispered, holding up the bundle. Just like Pa showed me. Where is the asylum wagon? Ilara asked. Parked by the livery stable, Liam pointed, waiting to take the others up the pass. Ilara looked at the layout. The livery stable sat at the bottom of the hill, directly beneath the town's massive wooden water tower. A desperate plan formed in her mind. We can't outrun them, Liam. We have to stop them cold. When I create a distraction at the square, you throw that bundle at the water tower's supports. Liam's eyes went wide. It'll flood the street. Exactly, Ilara said grimly. It will turn the road into a mud pit. That heavy carriage won't be able to move an inch. In the confusion, you cut your siblings loose and run for the church. Do not stop for me. Ilara straightened her dress, wiped the dust from her face, and walked into the crowd. She pushed her way to the front, just as Blackwood raised his hands at the podium. We have tamed this wilderness, Blackwood bellowed. We have brought civilization to the savage land. Ilara stepped into the light, resting her hand on the sheriff's gun. You haven't tamed anything, Silas, she screamed. The crowd gasped. Blackwood froze, his face paling. Seize her, he roared. She's an escaped prisoner. As the deputies moved, a deafening boom shattered the evening. The explosion ripped through the supports of the water tower. The massive tank groaned, tilted, and burst apart. A tidal wave of thousands of gallons of water crashed down the hill, hitting the main street with the force of a river. The dirt road instantly turned into a churning quagmire of thick, brown mud. The asylum carriage was slammed sideways. The horses panicked, and the heavy wheels sank deep into the muck, trapping the vehicle instantly. In the chaos, Ilara saw Liam sprinting through the mud. He slashed the leather straps on the carriage door. One by one, Sarah, the twins, and the little ones tumbled out, terrified but free, vanishing into the darkness toward the church. Ilara turned and ran for the bank. The blast had shattered the front window. She climbed through the broken glass, cutting her hands, and dropped into the lobby. It was dark, but she knew what she needed. She ran to the vault, but it was locked. Looking for this? Silas Blackwood stepped from the shadows of the manager's office. He held a Derringer pistol in one hand and the rolled-up map in the other. He wasn't panicking. He was smiling. You're predictable, Ilara, he sneered. Ilara raised the heavy Colt Peacemaker, leveling it at his chest. Her arm shook, but her aim was true. Give it to me, Silas, it's over. The children are gone. The children are irrelevant, Blackwood said, stepping closer. And you won't shoot. You're a seamstress, not a killer. I'm a mother, Ilara said, cocking the hammer. The click echoed loudly. And you have no idea what a mother will do. Blackwood stopped, seeing the cold resolve in her eyes. For the first time, he looked afraid. Suddenly, the front door was kicked open. Drop it, Mrs. Thorne. It was the deputy from the mine, Clyde. He was battered, half his face covered in dried blood and rock dust, holding a rifle pointed straight at her back. Ilara was trapped between Blackwood and the gunman. The house always wins, Blackwood laughed, his confidence returning instantly. Tie her up, Clyde. We'll let the fire from the riot outside spread to the bank. A tragic accident. The deputy limped forward. He walked past Ilara, his boots crunching on the glass. He looked at her, then at Blackwood, and then he turned the rifle and pointed it directly at Blackwood's chest. No, Clyde snarled. Blackwood blinked. Excuse me? You left me, the deputy said, his voice thick with pain. I was buried under that rock for 6 hours. I heard you give the order to leave the dead weight. Clyde, listen, Blackwood stammered. I ain't dead, Silas, Clyde spat, and I ain't dying for you. The silence in the bank was deafening. Deputy Clyde, battered and covered in grave dust, held his rifle steady at Silas Blackwood's chest. "You left me to die in that mine, Silas," Clyde rasped, the betrayal in his voice sharper than the broken glass on the floor. "I heard you give the order." Blackwood's arrogance faltered. He looked from the deputy to Ilara, who stood with the heavy Colt peacemaker leveled at him. The tycoon was trapped by the very people he had deemed insignificant. "The map!" Clyde commanded. "Give it to her." Trembling with rage, Blackwood threw the parchment onto the floor. "Take it." "It's useless. I had the telegraph lines cut this morning. You can't reach the marshal, and you won't survive the night." As if on cue, a gunshot shattered the upper transom window. Outside, the glow of torches illuminated the street. Sheriff Miller's voice boomed. "Come out, Mrs. Thorne. We have the building surrounded. Send Blackwood out or we burn it down." Ilara looked at the heavy steel door of the vault in the corner. It was their only chance. "Get in the vault," Ilara ordered. "You're insane," Blackwood spat. "It's time locked until 8 a.m. We'll suffocate." "The roof turbine provides ventilation," Ilara said, shoving Blackwood toward the steel room. She looked at Clyde. "Trust me." They scrambled inside just as a Molotov cocktail smashed against the lobby wall. Ilara spun the heavy internal wheel. Clang! The massive tumblers clicked into place, sealing them in darkness. The night was an agonizing test of endurance. Sealed in a 6x6 steel box with their enemy, Ilara clutched the map to her chest, listening to the muffled roar of the fire outside. She prayed the brick structure would hold. She prayed for Liam. Hours bled into one another. The air grew warm and stale. Finally, the mechanical gears of the time lock whirred. Click, clack, thunk. The heavy door swung open, flooding the vault with blinding morning light. Ilara raised her gun, expecting the sheriff. Instead, a tall man in a grey duster with a silver U.S. Marshal's star stood in the debris of the lobby. Beside him, grinning through exhaustion, was Liam. "Mrs. Thorne?" Marshal Davies asked. "Your son here rode through the night to find my patrol. He tells quite a story." Blackwood lunged past Ilara, screaming, "Marshal, thank God! This woman is a maniac! She kidnapped me!" Marshal Davies looked at the map in Ilara's hand, then at the battered Deputy Clyde. "Deputy," the Marshal said. "Care to weigh in?" Clyde spat blood on the floor. "Blackwood ordered Caleb Thorne's death. He rigged the mine, dammed the water illegally, and tried to burn us alive." The Marshal nodded to his men. "Cuff him. Federal charges, tampering with a waterway, and mail claims." As Blackwood was dragged away, screaming threats, Ilara's legs finally gave out. She didn't hit the floor. Sarah and Liam caught her, holding her up with surprising strength. "We got you," Sarah whispered, burying her face in Ilara's shoulder. "We got you, Ma." The Iron Mother, 6 months later, spring had transformed the valley. The Thorne homestead was no longer a place of starvation, but of life. The dam was gone, and the creek flowed clear and cold. Ilara sat on the porch, watching the twins chase a dog through the tall grass. Down by the water, the modest mining operation was in full swing. It wasn't a massive scar on the land, but enough to pay the debts and secure a future. Liam walked up the steps, looking taller and filling out his father's coat. He handed Ilara a thick envelope from Helena. "The adoption papers," he said. "They're stamped and official. Ilara Vance Thorne." Ilara traced the names listed below hers. She had come west for a husband, but she had found an army. "We fixed the sign over the gate, too," Liam added, pointing to the entrance of the ranch. Freshly painted in bright white letters it read, "The 7 Stars. Ranch home of the Iron Mother mine." "Iron Mother," Ilara laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Well," Sarah called out from the garden. "You did take out the sheriff with a bed leg and rob a bank to save us. It fits." Elara pulled Toby into her lap. She looked out at the golden hills and the children she had fought for. She had walked through fire and darkness to get here. But as the sun set over the 7 stars, Elara knew she was finally home. The story of Elara Thorne is a testament to the ferocity of love found in the most unlikely places. She arrived as a stranger with a carpet bag and left a legacy carved in gold and iron. She proved that blood doesn't make a family. Loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to stand against the darkness do. The Thorne children didn't need a savior. They needed a leader. And in Elara, they found both. If you enjoyed this wild ride through the West, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this story with someone who loves a good underdog victory, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new tale of drama, twists, and justice. Thanks for watching.